I guess I'll get started. I welcome everybody. Last week, Wednesday of the month. So I said last week that we were going to be doing a series type thing. This new series type thing where the last Wednesday of the month I was going to have the Discord vote on a Native American tribe to cover. You won't really know what tribe I'm having to vote for because I don't want you to be going into the research beforehand. So it's just a random thing, like this time it was numbers 1 through 12, and people need to vote. Surprising is 7-1. Probably a psychological thing, lucky 7s type deal going on there. But that's what I did. 7-1. And so we'll be going over briefly the 7th tribe I chose. I just took 12 from a random list I found online of North American tribes, and that's how I got it. Sorry if I'm kind of out of it. I'm not feeling too good. I was doing great, and then about a half hour ago, I started feeling sick. What the heck? So I've got a headache, but we're gonna pull through and get this done. Welcome everybody. It's nice to be back. I'm glad that I finally have my computer set up and able to really actually get this stream on course. It's kind of nice. I had this idea last year and I wasn't able to fully see it through. I bet that my AC is super loud, you guys. Is it super loud? If someone in chat could tell me if AC is super loud. Because if not, I want to leave it on. Because it is hot outside. It is so hot outside. We are reaching record numbers. We're 116 degrees out. It is not fun. And being in an apartment that was built in the 70s, it just, yeah. It's not cool. But if I need to, I will turn it off. I just don't want to because it will get hot. Okay, so let's begin, starting with Vendors. This past week was such a big week in paleoanthropology. We had not one, but 2 species come out and be defined recently. That's massive. Last one that was done was Homo and then before that it was Louisianensis, I think. And there might have been one in between those two, I'm not quite sure, but it's been a while. Naledi was back in 2012, 2011, and now we have 2 come out, so that was exciting, and I haven't really been able to go in depth into these 2 species like I would normally do. Work's been keeping me busy lately, and just haven't been able to do that. But I will. Hopefully, we will go over a few news articles on this. I'll throw out my questions about these species that were identified, these specimens that were identified, and hopefully when I do my in-depth research that I will present next week, those questions will kind of be answered. And if not, hopefully they lead to more questions, and in the future we'll get some answers. But let's start. First of all, we have this gentleman, a 146,000-year-old fossil dubbed the Dragon Man, might be one of our closest relatives. Which is amazing, the Dragon Man. A lot of times these species are named after their locations that they were discovered. And I believe this was the same that the location he was discovered. It's like the Dragon Cave or something like that. I'm not sure. Hopefully the article will explain. I did read briefly on it, but like I said, I'm not able to go in depth just yet on it. Yeah. When I do, I plan on getting like the scientific articles that were published, not just the scientific news posts that were made on it, and maybe I can actually like break it down for you guys. Because a lot of questions that I get is how do you identify the species? So going through how these scientists on these projects did it might be really beneficial for you guys. A mysterious Pleistocene skull from the Chinese well has inspired debate among paleontologists. Of course, we're always debating. We all like to argue, we all like to have our own opinion and tell the other person we agree or disagree. We're all very opinionated. 3 years ago, a Chinese farmer made an unusual donation to a university museum. A giant, nearly intact human skull with strange proportions and an unusual backstory. The man's family had been hiding the fossil since it was unearthed at a construction site in Harbin nearly 90 years ago. After geochemical detectives work to locate where the fossil is likely found, the painstaking comparison of its distinctive features with those of early humans, some of the scientists investigating the find believe the cranium from the Harbin could represent an entirely new human species, Homo longi, or dragon. If so, they further suggest it might even be the human lineage most closely related to ourselves, which we have currently, before this came out, as the Neanderthals and possibly the Denisovans, but we have so little information on the Denisovans, it's hard to say just how closely related they are to us, Homo sapiens. The discovery of the Harbin cranium and our analysis suggests that there is a third lineage of archaic human that once lived in Asia, and this lineage has a closer relationship with H. sapiens than the Neanderthals. Says Shinjin Ni. I am sorry, I don't know how to pronounce Asian names. I try my best on pronouncing any and all names. A paleoanthropologist at the Chinese Academy of Sciences in Hebei GEO University. If so, that would make the strange skull a close relative. Indeed, since most humans today still have significant amounts of Neanderthal DNA from repeated interbreeding between our species. Claims of a new human species are sure to cause skepticism and spark debate, but it seems that wherever the 146,000-year-old fossil falls on the human family tree, it will add to growing evidence that a fascinating and diverse period of evolution was occurring in China from about 100,000 to 500,000 years ago. And because excavations in China haven't been as extensive as those in places like Africa, experts are only beginning to uncover the evidence. Like its origins, the skulls, you know what, I'm just gonna bite the bullet and turn the gates off. Because I know it's gonna be loud for you. And it's loud for me. It's how loud the AC is. It actually makes it hard to relax at home with how noisy everything is because of the AC. The AC, the fans, any things running, the washer. It is too many noises. I wish we could make everything just be silent. It would be so nice. I'm sorry for this little off topic, but okay. Like its origins, this skull's 20th century story isn't entirely clear. The family that donated the skull to co-author Ji Huang at Hebei GEO University's museum had been hiding it in a well for 3 generations. It was unearthed in the 1930s when a railway bridge was built along the Sangao River, and the family suspected that it was important, but unsure what to do with the fossil, has safeguarded the skull ever since. That's awesome. Like, a lot of times people come across something and they end up destroying it, or they dig it up and put it in their garage or their barn or whatever, and they just kind of have it up like to look out for themselves, and it kind of sucks when that happens. We would have lost like a really important piece of a puzzle that we have been working on for so long. Extensive analysis of the skull began soon after it reached the museum in 2018 and resulted in 3 separate studies, all including me, that appeared this week in the open access journal, The Innovation. Direct uranium series dating suggests the skull is at least 146,000 years old. But a lot more work was needed to attempt to put the isolated fossil into context after 90 years. So, just going to mention this, the uranium series dating, there's actually multiple forms of dating fossils and other cultural biological materials. It depends on what material it is, what stage of fossilization it's in, and the date of the material. A lot of people, when you think of dating something, they immediately think of carbon dating, which is pretty commonly used, but carbon dating only goes back, I want to say, about approximately 40,000 years before it starts to become less reliable and a little bit more varied in its results, so you can sample the same thing and get a little bit more variation the farther back you go, the less accurate it becomes. So there's actually a lot of different dating techniques that we use, and when people just rely on carbon dating, that's pretty much what the public thinks of. There's many forms, and it's awesome that we've been able to develop all of these over time and been able to make them super accurate. Hold on. Hold on. I'm going to share this real quick because people are showing up, and I want people to show up. Link. I'm gonna paste this in Discord real quick. Oh, no. Whoops. There we go. There we go. Yes. Come join me, Discord people. I'm really getting off subject. I think it's the headache. I told you, not feeling good, just kind of out of it. Okay, the team used X-ray fluorescence, not fluorescence, fluorescence, to compare the skull's chemical composition with those of other metal Pleistocene mammal fossils discovered in the Hardin Riverside area, and found them strikingly similar. An analysis of rare earth elements from small pieces of bone in the skull's nasal cavity also matched those of human and animal remains from the Hardin locale found in sediments dated to 138,000 to 309,000 years ago. A very close inspection even found sediments stuck inside the skull's nasal cavity and their strontium isotope ratios proved a reasonable match for those found in a core that was drilled near the bridge where the skull was said to have been discovered. Among the different skull fossils the team compared are left to right Peking Man, which is Homo erectus, right here, Maba, Homo heidelbergensis, and some harder to classify fossils including Juniusha, Dolly, and Hardin now known as the Dragon. Observing the skulls in equal size was a far simpler matter. It's the largest of all known Homo skulls. The big cranium was able to house a brain similar in size to our own, but other features are more archaic. The skull has a thick brow, big, almost square eye sockets, and a wide mouth to hold oversized teeth. This intriguing mix of human characteristics presents a mosaic that the authors define as distinct from other Homo species, from the more primitive Homo heidelbergensis and Homo erectus, to more modern humans like ourselves. So, let's see. The Peking Man right here, and then the Dragon Man right here. You can see this huge brow. So, Homo erectus Homo is man, erectus is upright, so he was 100% a upright walking man. Then you have the one that the article is about, and you can see that similarly they have very large brow ridges. And Homo erectus actually did span a pretty big area, and traveled quite a bit. So it makes sense that they would I lost my train of thought. I completely lost my train of thought. What was I saying? I'm sorry, guys. Let's move on. I think I'm just gonna have to stick to this and not try to. Nee says that team compared 600 different morphological characteristics of the skull across a selection of some 95 area human skulls and mandibles. They used a set of mathematical techniques on all this data to create branching diagrams that sketch out phylogenetic relationships of the different Homo species. That analysis suggests that there were three main lineages of later Pleistocene humans, each descended from a common ancestor: H. sapiens, H. neanderthalensis, and a group containing carbon, and a handful of other Chinese fossils that have proved difficult to classify, including those from Dali, Jiniushan, and Hualongdong. Our results suggest that the carbon cranium, or Homo longi, represents a lineage that is the sister group of the H. sapiens lineage. So we say H. longi is phylogenetically closer to H. sapiens than Neanderthals. Which is, it really depends on the characteristics that you are creating that phylogenetic tree on, and how you calculate those similarities. You can reorganize a phylogenetic tree pretty easily depending on what characteristics you put more emphasis on as being most Homo sapien. Not saying that this isn't really useful tool in order to characterize things and see their relationships. Whether or not the skull is a valid species is certainly up for debate. Which, of course, it's when you come out with a new species and you declare that, hey, I've got a whole new species here, it's always up for debate. People are going to be like tearing your research apart, basically, because you are throwing a whole new puzzle piece down that people did not know was there. It's exciting because it is a really interesting cranium, and it does have some things to say about human evolution and what's going on in Asia. But it's also disappointing that it's 90 years out from discovery, and it is just an isolated cranium, and you're not quite sure exactly how old it is or where it fits, says Petraglia, who was not involved in the study. The scientists do the best they can, but there's a lot of uncertainty and missing information, so I expect a lot of reaction and controversy to this cranium. I completely agree with Petraglia. I completely agree. Like, the fact that you don't know exactly how old it is, the discovery is being 90 years late kind of does suck, but that does happen. Like, a lot of times you're out, people want to build something somewhere, you find it, you put it in a box, and it goes into the museum in the back storage, and it gets forgotten about for 50 years. Until some scientists doing some research, or grad students, or whatever, doing inventory, comes across it and is like, hey, this is interesting. It happened with Amelia Earhart. She was missing for so long, right? Everybody didn't know what happened to her. It turns out she was actually in a box in I think it was a museum, for like a few decades, and they didn't know that she was there. They had found these remains, they put them in a box, and said, we'll get to these to figure out who they are at some point. They finally came across them 3 years ago, and are pretty sure that it was Amelia Earhart. Okay, so yeah, it happens, and it kind of sucks, but at least it wasn't completely lost. And then as far as it being an isolated cranium, that's my biggest issue with this, is you only have the cranium, you don't have the rest of this individual, and you only have one of them. When you only have one, how certain can you be that it is representative of an entire species rather than just a unique individual? Look at the variation that we find in Homo sapiens today. People, we're all the same species, but we can be very, very different. You can have someone that is 7 foot and super tall, from like Northern Europe type, or like Viking type, and then you go to like South America, and there's someone who is 4'5". Their physical features are very different. They mentioned the eye sockets, which is pretty varied in modern humans as well. How can you say that this one individual, it represents an entirely new species? Which is why I want to go into the actual scientific articles and see how they broke it down and what their measurements of certain things are and comparisons, to know what they actually based it off of, which they're not going to go in for these like news article type reports. Chris Stringer, study co-author from the Natural History Museum of London, doesn't necessarily agree with some of his colleagues that the skull should be classified as a distinct species. I would agree. I personally think that you should probably hold off on saying it's a new species until you have a couple specimens, if possible. That's just me. I guess I tend to be a bit more on the cautious side. But modern day, like, academia, it's about getting the news out there, getting the title, getting the funding, and it can be difficult. And then there's the personal, like, people want to find that next big thing, that new puzzle piece. They want to find that. I mean, I can't blame him. I'd love to find a new species myself and be like, woo, I found a new species. Check it out. But I don't know. I get it, you know, trying to put your name out there, but I think caution can be a good thing too. Streamer stresses the importance of genetics in establishing where species branch off from one another. I can understand the importance of that. Not understand. I agree in the importance of that. But you can't always get DNA from these specimens, especially with how old they are. You're not guaranteed that the genetic material is there and even reliable. So, important, but not the only thing to utilize. He currently favors the view that the Harbin fossil and the Dolly skull, nearly complete 250,000-year-old specimen found in China's Shaanxi. How do they pronounce it? X, is it? Because they have the SH going on. I thought X was kind of a sh as well. Shaanxi, is it a Z? Shaanxi province, which also displays an interesting mix of features, might be grouped as a different species dubbed H. Daliensis. But Strain was also enthusiastic about what can still be learned from the Harbin skull, noting that it should also help to flesh out our knowledge of the mysterious Denisovans, and that will form part of the next stage of research. The Denisovans, ancient humans who shared an ancestor with Neanderthals and ourselves, left behind evidence of their intimate relations with us in the DNA of modern peoples in Asia and Oceania. So far, however, little physical evidence of them has turned up. Only 3 teeth and 2 small bone fragments from a Siberian cave. Finger bones. Katerina Harvati is a paleoanthropologist at the University of Tübingen, not associated with the study. Among her research subject is the controversial skull from Apidina, Greece. That may or may not represent the oldest modern human ever found outside of Africa. Harvati found the Harbin skull an intriguing mix of features previously associated with other lineages. Middle Pleistocene human evolution is known to be extremely complex, famously called the muddle in the middle. She says, and it has been clear for some time that the Asian human fossil record may hold the key to understanding it. The study of the Harbin skull, she notes, adds some clarity to the picture thanks to extensive comparisons of morphological and phylogenetic analysis. The Harbin cranium is somewhat similar to other Asian fossils like Huanglongdong and Dali in showing unexpected combinations of features, including some previously associated with H. sapiens. The authors also identify similarities between Harbin and the very few known Denisovan fossils. I think that these studies help bring the evidence together and point to the distinct lineage of Asian Middle Pleistocene hominins closely related to our own lineage, as well as that of Neanderthals. Nice. Tech support is here. So I guess they've already done some imaging of what the Dragon Man may have looked like. So as you can see, it's pretty stocky from this rendition of him. They gave him some toenails. What is with that? Like, gnarly toenails, gross. But they have him with a fur covering of some kind, and some stone tools, pretty stocky, long arms, pretty short legs compared to the rest of him. I'm curious how they did this. Yeah. I'd like to know how they determined that his arms are kind of long compared to his torso and lower limbs here, when all they have is the cranium. So, yeah, it's a really exciting time. New species, possibly. If not, he is a pretty well intact specimen of another identified species that may kind of solidify their characteristics. Either way, it's a wonderful find. Hopefully I'll find time this week to be able to go into the actual scientific articles and kind of bring it out for you guys. Unless you guys aren't interested in that, you can tell me now or in the Discord. Whichever. Okay. Let's see. I think I'm going to have to end that and just move on to this, because I'm not feeling very good. Not feeling very hot at all, guys. Maybe it's the heat. Maybe I'm dehydrated. I don't know. I'll go drink some water after this. I gotta eat dinner too. Where am I? I don't know where I'm at. What am I doing? No. There we go. Music is stopped. Don't care, skip, thank you. Alright. So, the one chosen this week, as you can see, is the Matoak. I hope I pronounced things correctly. Speaking can be difficult. So, the Matoak. Who are they? They are kind of just a group of tribes found on Long Island. I didn't realize there were so many on Long Island. Pre-contact, there was quite a few tribes. And slightly different each, but kind of clumped together because of their location and their political structure when they were found. This music is loud. Let's turn that down. That's better. Alright. So, as you can see, the Matoak are made up of, that should be capitalized. Why is the lowercase? What's up with that? The Montauk, the Korchog, Shinnecock, Manhasset, Rockaway, Patrick, Canarsie. Oh, that's twice. That's twice. Oh my gosh, this is bad. Why do I have them twice? Anyway, okay, so yes, it's made up of these tribes, and that is blurry. Okay, so you can see here we have Long Island, approximate location of where they were, just along the entire island. note this right here, New Amsterdam. Just keep that in mind for coming up. So they spoke an Algonquin language, regional differences resembling neighboring tribes within present-day Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New Jersey. So going, Hannah, can you go to that? Ooh, nope. Nope, that's just great. There we go. So you're like northeastern part of the island is going to kind of have some more similarity with like Connecticut, and then your southwestern part of the island is going to have kind of some similarities with tribes in like the mainland of New York, present-day New York, and like New Jersey area of today. They were seafaring, which makes sense. They're on an island. They were considered pretty mild-tempered for the most part. They weren't very hostile to each other or to newcomers when they first came. They were skilled in the management of canoes, seine, and the spears. So pretty self-sufficient people, which kind of have to be back in the day. Knowledgeable in the making of seamen or wampum flints, so they had a very distinct stone tool culture. Knowledge in the making of the wampum, the chieftaincies were hereditary by lineage, but they were also including females, so they preferred following the male, but if a son wasn't born, the daughter would be given rule. The Montauk or the Montucket were the most warlike of the tribes on the island, and prior to European arrival, they steadily reduced the other tribes' populations or the level of subjugation. Wyandotch was the Montauk sachem, so their leader was the Grand Sachem of the Grand Sachem of all of the tribes on the island. And when Europeans arrived and they wanted to make treaties or land deals with any of the tribes, the Montauk Sachem had to actually give his blessing and sign the document as well as the individual tribe's leader, which really makes sense. I mean, if you're going to be a little bit more warlike and you're going to kind of roll over the other tribes and enforce your rule over them, then yeah, you're going to be like, you can't do that. You need my permission to do that. So here you can see kind of what they, their settlement would have looked like. They would have had some pretty nice structures, living pretty close together. They would have had farming, you can see right here. Okay, so when the Europeans came, they wanted to push the Native Americans out. And to do that, the new Netherlands settlement of New Amsterdam, which we saw on the map, their Governor Kieft, decided to push them out by taxing them. He decided to tax the natives on Long Island, and this kind of ticked them off. And it led to the Wappinger War or the Kieft War. Governor Kieft, and so the war is kind of named after him, which took over a two-year period between 1643 and 1645. The war spread to include warriors from at least 20 different tribes, which, when you're facing a foe that is kind of technologically more advanced, they had certain firearms that the natives didn't, and they didn't want to be like ruled by these people that came from so far away. So they started recruiting other native tribes to get help so that they didn't like get pushed out of their own land. Kieft then recruited approximately 150 English colonists. So this was the Dutch colonists in the area. He went to Connecticut and he recruited 150 English men to help with this uprising of the natives. And this led to the Wappinger and the Matoak having nowhere to retreat and were pretty obliterated. Like, they got multiple tribes in to try and help them, and the Dutch were just like, no, we're gonna get these guys to help us. They came in, pretty much obliterated it, the uprising, and retreated. So yeah, the natives were forced to retreat, but before a peace is signed at Fort Orange in August 1645, more than 1,600 Wappinger and their allies were killed. That's a lot. I'm not quite sure how many the Dutch already had, but they just recruited 150 Englishmen, and 1,600 natives died from this. The Matoak grew tired of their situation and decided to correct it by killing all of the Dutch on Long Island. They're like, screw this. We don't like it. We don't like what you're doing. You killed a whole bunch of us. We're just going to kill you off and be done with it. But somehow the English colonists in Connecticut found out about this, and they decided to tell the Dutch. They warned the Dutch about this, who then prevented the uprising, and the governor Stuyvesant responded with troops, but after promising to halt the Wappinger raids, is still forced to ransom 50 Dutch colonists who were being held by the Matoak. So, honestly, they should have just left the Americans alone and not tried taxing them, but eventually the Dutch won. The Matoak weren't able to fend off, and a treaty was signed. A nice little picture. The Shinnecock natives of Long Island had seen their territory shrink considerably over the previous 200 years, as had their numbers to warfare and European disease. Don't forget that Europeans, they arrived, they brought all of their germs with them, and ended up introducing new diseases to the natives that had no immune system to be able to fight these off, and it decimated them. In fact, some smallpox. We learned about like how bad smallpox was for Native Americans, and how it was even like weaponized by the European settlers, giving smallpox blankets to natives. But something that isn't really talked about is smallpox made its way across the continent far quicker than the actual settlers did. So before Europeans and their descendants were able to make it across the continent over to the west coast, smallpox made its way and it decimated tribes. There were entire villages that passed from this. So that is crazy. And if you think about it that way, when European settlers and their descendants, when the U.S. was formed, started to move west, tribes were already, like, they weren't at full strength when that happened, because things like smallpox had already come through and started killing natives off. When the, like, European colonialism and domination of the Americas is talked about, even in Mesoamerica, like the Aztecs, you don't really talk about what the state of the native population was and what those governments were facing at the time. Last week I talked about how the Aztecs were actually experiencing a lot of issues before the Spaniards arrived. They were having political issues, they were having droughts, which was leading to, like, famine, and they were having issues when the Spaniards arrived with disease. So when you look at the political situation of an area, when two cultures meet, you gotta look at both sides of what was actually going on, instead of just saying, yeah, the Spaniards arrived or the Dutch arrived and they were just so powerful they obliterated these people. These people were so technologically inferior, when that's really not the only case that was going on. So, around the time of the American Revolution, the Native American population of Long Island was pretty small. It was estimated that only 400 natives remain on the island. By the time of the American Revolution, natives are a rare sight on the island, having been driven away from their beloved home. During this century, the natives become assimilated into other groups that gradually move away from the East Coast, especially the Brotherton. However, some groups remain on the island and their descendants are still there today, which you don't really think of. Like, when you hear of New York and Long Island, you don't think of Native Americans anymore. You think of the city and, like, rich people, kind of. So, the fact that they're still able to find some Native Americans there today from these people is amazing. That it really shows a resilience within these people. So, census in 1910, over 100 years ago, but still kind of helps you see what happened to the tribe and where they may be today. The census showed 167 Shinnecock, 29 Montauk, and only 1 Puspatuk. Currently, there are 2 reservations on Long Island. There's the Shinnecock, which has approximately 400 residents, and the Puspatuk Reserve, which has about 200 on Quachog. On Quachog. Neither of these, though the state of New York attempted to close these reservations back in the 30s, the state recognition of the Shinnecock and Quachog dates from the colonial period. However, since they have not signed treaties with the United States federal government, they are not federally recognized, which many Native American tribes and confederacies aren't actually recognized by the federal government. You could probably do a quick Google search of federally recognized and not federally recognized reservations and tribes, and there's a lot. When this happens, so there's the NAGPRA, Native American Graves Repatriation Act, and there's other ones, but when you come across like a Native American site and there's remains or cultural material, especially if they're like human remains, the NAGPRA requires that the remains are actually repatriated to the appropriate tribe. Now, that only applies to federally recognized tribes. If they aren't federally recognized, but they have a stronger claim to those human remains, they can't get their ancestors back. A lot of times they may go and team up with a federally recognized tribe so that is closely related, and that tribe can get the remains back and then transfer them to the appropriate tribe. And it's kind of sad that these people can't get their ancestors' remains back because the federal government won't recognize them. Okay, next. So their descendants now live in small communities in the area or have been absorbed into other groups and moved farther west as time went on. I thought I had a picture. I guess I do not. There's only two, they're really small, and then most of them just kind of reside in the area. And they're pretty much a mixed descendants. It's really interesting to follow what may have happened to those very far eastern tribes that had first contact with the European settlers, and knowing what may have happened to them. I got all this information from these three sites. If you want to go check them out a bit more, that's them right there. I like to give my sources, and what are you doing? No political stuff. Go away. We don't do politics here. We just want some good old jazz. And chill. And talk about Native Americans and other stuff. Hominids. Talk about hominids. Yeah, so those are the sources. I do tend to also like post my sources in the Discord, which I haven't done in the last two streams. I probably should do that. I'll do that. I'll make sure to do that. Yep. There we go. Okay. So, yes. Are there any questions? I think I'm going to end the stream here. I know I didn't do a lot of the articles. But I also had that, like, whole Montauk lesson. Are there any questions? Anything you would like to go over? Either now or the next stream? If you have any ideas that maybe like a good recurring thing like the Native American tribe that I plan to cover on the last Wednesday of every month. I am not thinking straight. It's weird. There's actually a pretty good delay too. Anyways. What about Clovis' first theory? What do you mean, comments on it? Like, I'm not quite sure like what you're wanting to know about the Clovis verse theory. There's the pre-Clovis culture as well, and it makes sense that because Clovis first discovered in Clovis, New Mexico, that style has been found in many places across the U.S., across like North America, and if natives came from Asia, they would have brought with them stone tools, would have brought with them techniques and a culture that had already been developed over there, and as they came over the Bering land bridge, they would have brought their own. They would have brought that culture, that technique of making stone tools with them. So then when they were here and they came across new material to have to be able to work with, and new environments, new cultural trends, new animals, new everything, things would have changed. They would have developed new techniques. So it's not like Clovis just suddenly popped up and that was the only stone tool technology that they had. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. If you have any more questions about Clovis first theory, we can talk about it in the Discord, or maybe I can go over it in the next stream. I'm not sure. It was nice chatting with all of you. Remember, I stream every Wednesday at 6 o'clock, and I'm going to come up with some good closing. I'll work on that. Yeah, 6 o'clock Wednesdays. I'll see